Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast with Benji Naesen, powered by Le Col, our show partner. This is the Tour de Romandie Stage 1, even though we had a prologue. So Cycling, is the ground level, Benji, in Belgium 0, ground, or 1? I know it differs in other countries. In an elevator, they're the sort of things, the existential questions we need to consider. Should a prologue be 1, 0? We think 1. Anyway, Le Col just brought out a Stelvio and Ventoux kit for summer in Europe. They look absolutely sick. Go and check them out if you're interested in getting some summer jerseys. But onto this stage, 169 Ks. They do a circuit of 2 climbs mainly. There's a Laras climb at the start, but the 2 main climbs are the Produit and Chamoisson. They're joined together. The first one, the Produit, 2.7 Ks at 7%. Then they descend into the Chamoisson, 2.1 Ks at 6.2%. No real steep pinches. They look like narrow vineyard roads, quite scenic actually, from Aigle to Martigny. And between these climbs was about 30 kilometers of flat. And after the last climb, we had 22, 23 kilometers of flat. There was significant headwind on the stage, which affected it a lot. We were thinking there would be, not thinking there would be, but possible there could be attacks on those climbs. But how did the stage play out, Benji?
Basically, we started off with a breakaway, and the breakaway was relatively powerful. We had the likes of Diego Ulissi. Hasn't been that great this season so far, but he had I think a hard issue at the start of the season, if I recall correctly.
Yes.
Then Bowara was in there as well. Robert Bauer, Concha for Trek, if I recall correctly. And then Arendsman for DSM with Joel Sutter, who is representing the Swiss national team here. You've got the option, if you're Swiss and you're not on the start list of another team at a race like Romandie, you get the opportunity, well, if you're selected by the national team, to ride for your national team here. So that's pretty cool if you didn't know that. But that's how he got in there. When it comes to this breakaway, yeah, I don't feel like it was going to make it throughout the stage. The gap was relatively high at the start, but we saw that in the peloton. They were keeping it relatively controlled, and those were the teams of the sprinters. We had Bahrain putting someone at the front. We had Bora putting someone at the front. We had Mitchelton for Dean Smith putting someone at the
Eddie
front.
Dunbar.
Just everybody had like one person in there. And we saw that, Ineos was taking control of the race as well a tiny bit, even though, is there something for them here? I think it's just another jersey for another day and nothing more than that, to be honest. But this breakaway fell apart, I think, on the last hill pretty much, where Joel Sutter went for a bit of a move. Then he got countered by Tijmen Arendsman, very nice climber, very talented young guy, and he dropped everybody and Joel Sutter as well, and then he basically got caught himself. So that's the story of the breakaway today. And eventually, after that last climbing section, we landed with a peloton that was being led by the 4 best flat riders in the entire peloton. Oh my God. The likes of Ben Zwiehoff, Hermann Spensteiner. Who else? I had 2 other names in my head.
Well, it was so stop-start, Benji. What happened? So what happened was, on these last climbs, you're thinking, okay, maybe Mitchelton or Bike Exchange want to get rid of Sagan, Viviani, the quickest guys here, because Smith climbs better than them. And no one really paced. It was weird. They brought back the break, I think, almost too quickly, and then they stopped pacing the sprinters' teams. And then the climb, it was just Ganna, and he let Arendsman go. He didn't really care. And I didn't think the pace was that hot on the climb at all. Peloton was still pretty big, and we were looking, where's Viviani? And it appeared that he'd been dropped. Froome had been dropped on the climb, but Sagan's... Bauhaus? Yeah, true, Benji. But Sagan, Colbrelli, Smith, Court, I believe, were not dropped. And I think, isn't it Solo here, Benji? Was he going to...
I don't think so.
No, he's going to the Giro. I just saw another guy with the Quebecer kit in the second group. So Bike Exchange started pacing really hard for a second with Germay and Buchwalter. And then Eddie Dunbar just let their wheel go after the climb with 14 Ks to go. So it was just 2 Bike Exchange guys supposed to be doing a lead out or keeping Viviani behind. And Dunbar was like, you're going way too quick, and let it go. And then they came back, and then Bike Exchange just stopped pacing at all. It made no sense to me. I didn't get it at all. Why they were burning. It should have been up to Sagan. He was like prohibitive favourite at this time in the race with 10Ks to go. I think $2.50 in the live markets, because really it's just Colbrelli, Court, Smith, Venturini here he's sprinting against. He should be cleaning it up. And what maybe go through the next 10Ks, Benji, where the pace just came out of the race completely. Such a bizarre finish.
Yeah, you mentioned it. Start stopping the peloton, then it caused other people to think, we don't have a sprinter in our team. Let's try and go for a YOLO attack here. And that's what the Gunning Quickstep was like. And Cavagna decided to first go for himself for a tiny bit. He had a bit of a gap and then, didn't. So he got caught again. And then it was up to, I think, Stefan Kung, who was the next rider with about 13K to go for a little joyride. But that didn't last too long either. And it was only one attack that actually stayed up for a tiny bit, and that was including Cavagna once again, and also a teammate who everybody thought was Czerny, but it wasn't, because he was 10 minutes behind the peloton at that point, and it was Cataneo that was with him. And we saw a reaction by two teams with sprinters here on paper. We have FDG with the likes of Jake Stewart on paper in the peloton, and Mitchelton with on paper Dion Smith in the peloton as sprinter as well. I completely forgot who the two riders were. I think Reichenbach and
Hausen was sitting on.
Hausen, okay. Yeah. And they weren't doing anything because, on paper, they had sprinters at the back.
Yeah.
And they were just following every single time when the Koenig rider was going out the front of this group. They would latch onto the wheel of the guy that,
honestly,
that
Benji,
went off the front. Yeah.
They would have been better off, those two teams, sending Kung and Hausen to work with those quick step guys. They would have been more likely to get a good result. Or at least, I don't know why they were so keen on scuppering it, because it would have put Bora and Bahrain in a difficult position. But anyway, they eventually got brought back. It was then the slowest run into the line because no one really had a lead out. Zehoff had been pacing. So Ineos kind of paced for a bit. Yeah. It's like he paced for Court, I guess. And because no one really wanted to use up their lead out, even though no one really had any. Kung was looking after Stewart. He podium bomb loop, right, Benji, the young British sprinter. And he was really deep, then he brought him up late. Wasn't a particularly technical finish at all. It was a little bit wet, but not too sketchy either. It was Bahrain leading it out through the last right-hand corner, but they didn't have a quick lead out particularly. And they just had one guy in front of Colbrelli. So it was just a really kind of messy and slow sprint into Martigny, and Sagan plonked himself fourth wheel on Paddy Bevan's wheel. Paddy Bevan's actually low-key quite a good sprinter, by the way. People don't realise that. He's not just...
Not high-key, very low-key.
High-key, low-key, actually...
Very, very low-key.
Yeah, not just a TT guy. World Tour.
Only in the Santos Down Under.
No, it's a World Tour race. I'll throw hands at you. So yeah, Colbrelli getting a lead out, Sagan fourth wheel on Bevan's wheel, and Colbrelli kicks really, really early, and I'm like, oh, this is trouble. I'm not sure what the wind conditions were, but it was very early. He's on the left-hand barrier, so Sagan then comes up to side-by-side with Bevan. Sagan had already kicked into the wind a little bit early, trying to move up onto Colbrelli's wheel, but Colbrelli went the other side of his lead-out man. So Sagan didn't get that draft that he was anticipating or hoping for. He kind of moves onto Colbrelli's wheel. In this sprint, Sagan, imagine Colbrelli and Bevan are flush with the left-hand barrier. Colbrelli's kicking, Bevan's right in the slipstream. Sagan moves over and squeezes, really gradually squeezes Bevan's space. He's a little bit ahead of Bevan and takes some of Colbrelli's draft. That forces Bevan to stop pedaling, lest he gets his handlebars chopped and he goes into the barriers. And then Sagan comes out of Colbrelli's slipstream to the right-hand side. Bevan tries to then follow him, but it's too late. Sagan, with no one with any kick behind, really winning this sprint as he was supposed to, ahead of Colbrelli. Bevan third, Pasqualon fourth, Covey fifth, Court sixth, Dion Smith, bit disappointing, frankly, seventh, Venturini eighth, Cataneo ninth, Mosca 10th. Where's Moschetti? Did you get dropped, Benji? Must have.
Yeah, he got dropped.
So
he's way behind.
I think the sprinters that got dropped would be disappointed with Viviani and Moschetti in particular, and Bauhaus. Like that pace on he's big, but the pace on that last climb wasn't that hot. But how did you see that sprint, Benji? Is Sagan back? Or if he hadn't won this, would you be really concerned? And this is just kind of a par victory.
I think this is a par victory. We expected him to do very well here on this situation in the sprint. We said yesterday that on paper he should get over the hills, and if he does, he would win. And it basically turned out like that. Outside of that, I think that what Sagan does is smart. He follows people's draft to try and get the benefit of that, to come out of that in the last meters. But the problem is that he's such a good bike rider, he's such a good bike handler, that I think he also thinks that everybody else is a good bike handler. Because imagine if Bevan is not a good bike handler here and gets squeezed by Sagan here just behind Colbrelli, then this could be a very dangerous thing. And I think this is again one of those discussions of where does the line lie when it comes to invading someone's space and creating a sort of environment where someone else has to stop sprinting to not result into being in the barriers.
Yeah.
So I don't know. What's your take on this sprint by Sagan? Because a lot of people that I've seen have been calling it pretty dirty, and I'm on the edge, but I'm also leaning towards the dirty side.
Oh, no. There's lots of different things. It's legal. There's no rule that I see that you can do anything about it. 100% legal. Does he know what he's doing? Yes. Does he care if Bevan... He puts Bevan in a pretty dangerous situation. It's a dangerous move. If Bevan doesn't... He says to Bevan, you're on Colbrelli's wheel. If you keep pedaling at the same speed on the same straight line, you will likely crash or will come into contact and you'll touch the barriers. So that forces Bevan to make a choice. Am I willing to risk that, try and push Sagan off, or am I just going to stop pedaling and get squeezed and then I lose the sprint? He chose life. And that's really difficult. We spoke about this last year. It's like a chicken and egg problem. Did he endanger him if Bevan took steps to take himself out of danger? We saw some people almost saying, well, if Jakobsen had stopped pedaling and had braked, then technically Groenewegen wouldn't have endangered him. Obviously a more extreme move, but that's that kind of logic that is the problem with the rules as they currently stand. Whereas I think they should say something like, if you come into another rider's line in a sprint, force them to take corrective action to avoid crashing or potentially crashing. Maybe not a relegation, but a yellow card or something. Benji mentioned off air. Benji mentioned, maybe a yellow card is more appropriate. This is really marginal, but it is a dangerous move. If Bevan was on Colbrelli's wheel, he'd got himself in that space and he got basically squeezed off it. So it's not the end of the world, but I guess this is what Sagan does. You don't see Wout van Aert doing this sort of thing generally. He just backs his own sprint, and I feel like Sagan, he needs to get everything right. He needs to, the legs aren't good enough, Benji, to just toast everyone, even a group like this. So that's why he's looking for every advantage. But yeah, do you have a different take on it, on the chicken and egg sort of discussion?
Found it a pretty good take of yours. I think that the important factor in the rule you discuss is that you don't solely keep it towards having to make a correctional move, because if you do that, then I could be endangered if I see someone 10 meters away from me moving towards me and I'm like, oh God, is he going to arrive towards me and hit me? And if that rider stops 5 meters from me, then there's no danger at all, but I still feel endangered. And that's also an issue with if you think that it's solely based on the correctional move. And I think that you're right when you say it's not, because a rider would also have to come into the space of the rider that is feeling endangered to make this an actually endangered moment in the race, if that makes any sense. I think that's kind of the clue I'm trying to deliver here. It's honestly, it shows that it's very difficult to get a rule straight and correct the first time around, but it's also the fact that we've been thinking about this 2 minutes every time it happens on the podcast. And if you hire someone to dive into every single exception for an entire day, you'll be easily coming up with a better rule than the one that is out here today. So, yeah.
Well, let us know what you
that's, I think, the point we're trying to make.
I mean, some people will say cycling has been like this for hundreds of years, and there's nothing in it, and we're trying to kill the sport. Some people might say we've not gone far enough. We'd be interested to hear your take on the Sagan move, but definitely it's really smart. Like, he put himself in the best position to win, and zero chance of a relegation. Tomorrow's stage from Le Neuville to Saint-Imier, 165 Ks almost again, but a hilly one, 3,300 meters plus of climbing. I think they do 2 laps, seems. They do at least a couple of laps of the finish line beforehand, but different climbs. So they obviously do slightly different circuits, which is quite nice. I encourage you to, I've got the map up. But the main final climb was 2. There's Le Pontet, 4.2 Ks at 8%, 33 Ks is the crest from the finish. And then the last major climb is La Vue des Alpes, 148 Ks into the stage, 17 Ks from the finish. The crest, it's pretty gradual. There's no real steep. It's relatively steep, but no nasty pinches. And then a descent sort of running into the finish, but a flat sections as well in a valley. Here's she, Benji. We would have said all day here's she last year and that sort of finish. What do you think? Or Lutsenko lost 10 minutes today. Is he being smart?
I think he's being smart, definitely. Lutsenko has no position in GC here anyway and no goal for that. But while we're talking about all these breakaway riders, I think that one rider that also lost time today, perhaps not as much, but still a notable amount, is the rider I've shouted yesterday for a stage win in Tour de Romandie, and I completely believe in the ability to do so. Marco Brenner, I believe it's happening.
I love it.
Honestly, it has to happen. 18 years old, absolute legend, young cyclist on DSM, and he's talented. You know more about him and his physiology than I do, I think, but what type of rider is he?
He's actually quick. So he's a climber. He's really small, like I, but he's got a lot of punch as well. But this is in, I guess, juniors. But his numbers that he's told me are good. If it's sort of 10 minutes, I'm not sure, over like 30 and 40. But I don't know, maybe he's just getting used to. He's so young. I think he's like 19 years old.
18, I think, still.
18 years old.
Yeah, 18.
So, I mean, yeah, super young. But yeah, he's actually...
It's a new meta, man.
If he gets in a reduced bunch, I wouldn't underestimate his kick either. I think it could be all right. What about another man on his team, Benji? Ulan van Wilder. Is he far back enough on GC to... Probably not.
Nope.
No.
He's going for GC.
Yeah.
I think he's going to top 10 Romandie. I'm not even joking about it.
No,
he's been absolutely decent this season. I was going to say godlike, but that's not true. He's been very talented and decent this season already. I think when it comes to his results, he was 29th in Itzulia, got 15 Von and 17 and 15 and 16 Von 4 stage in a row in there. So quite a few of those were hilly. He was 10th in Copia Bartali, so can definitely hang on as well. When it comes to Copia Bartali, we also saw that Brenner was doing decent results there. And when it comes to Brenner, I want to focus on the fact that he got 24th at Flèche Wallonne. So that's certainly a good result. Because I think that I'm more leaning towards a breakaway for tomorrow's stage. I don't know why. I feel like the climbs are not necessarily hard, but they're also a bit much
there's a lot
to have Mitchelton control it the entire stage. If I look at how they looked after today's stage, I don't believe that they can control tomorrow.
No.
So I think that a breakaway might be taking it. Yeah.
Or imagine they shouldn't bother. No way. They shouldn't bother with that. Just go for the break. I wasn't thinking it, Benji, but you just put it into my mind. I hope they don't do that.
Oh, no.
Catania, Benji, for the Koenig Quickstep. He climbs okay, doesn't he? What about he? Yeah, he does. He's a good climber. He's one up in Nino.
Yeah, he does.
Is he an option for tomorrow from a break?
This reminds me mainly towards, I think, last year's Vuelta where we had in the third week a similar stage when it comes to the parkour, and it started raining and foggy in the last 30 kilometers.
Yeah.
And he went on a
one.
solo attack, and I think he
Maida
won
won.
that stage.
No, he didn't win.
Who won?
No. Maida and him
No, I don't know.
looked like they were going to win, I think. It was a weird stage. But they didn't.
Yeah, I think it's that one.
Yeah. I know the one you're thinking of. I don't really have a good feeling on this. I think it could be another snoozer, Benji. Honestly, I think Ineos is so dominant and controlling. I don't know about the wind conditions, but if no one's setting pace, Benji, on that last climb, the break is caught, and say the break is at 3 to 5 minutes all day because Ineos are keeping it there, then UAE pace, bring it down before the last climb to a minute, etc., and then Ineos or whoever, like, are UAE really going to be able to pace that hard on that climb? I mean, if I'm Hirschi, I want to get, like in the Tour, he'd get in a break early and then work them over on these regular climbs. Would be perfect.
He's too close.
He's way too close on GC, so that's the problem really for the break tomorrow. I feel like it could be.
Question.
Yes.
When it comes to Hirschi, I made this point a few times this year already, but now he's actually in the form that he can actually do something with it. He has the ability to do decent in the lead group in a climbing stage, but against Ineos, that will be troublesome. How much do you think he needs onto Ineos before the stage 4 mountain stage for him to make a potential GC victory here?
Wait, who?
Knowing there's a time trial at the end. Mark Hirschi.
Mate, not.
Am I dreaming?
Yeah, you're dreaming. What?
Like,
not happening.
Wouldn't it be nice? Like, with a hill stage tomorrow and a hill stage on stage 3, I don't know. It's more of a potentials again. I don't know.
3's not that hard, I don't think. 4, and then 4 is too hard for it. So I don't see it.
I tried, okay? I'm trying to make this interesting, okay? Because let's be real. Today's stage was amazing.
Yeah, all right. We don't really know what's going to happen tomorrow. We think it could be kind of weird again because the gaps are so close on GC. Maybe they do it really slow. Maybe Magnus Cort wins a reduced bunch sprint and there's no breakaway. Or
it could, but
Venturini. Can Venturini climb that well?
Cavagna.
Yeah. Maybe it's, I don't know. Could be weird. Could be someone like Cataneo sprinting against Venturini. Or Rui Costa. And Hirschi.
Rui Costa, the benefit is that it's in Switzerland. He's always good in Swiss races.
Yep. Won GC, Tour de Suisse, I think, a couple of times. All right, that's enough. You can let us know down below who's going to win. Maybe Froome's deliberately lost time. We can only hope. We'll see you tomorrow with the Stage 2 recap. Ciao.